Summing this up as just a fancier KTM 390 Duke is like saying anime is just a Japanese cartoon. There is more to it than that because this is the 2024 Husqvarna Svartpilen 401. The name is a mouthful, but this is more powerful, comfier and more usable than ever before. And it might just be better than the Duke I so dearly love. But that is for later in the video. We've also done an FAQ at the end, so stick around for that. But for now, let's get to that first bit. Power. And since this Swedish anime is very closely based on an Austrian cartoon, it gets the same lighter, incredibly responsive chassis as the new 390 Duke and the more compact LC4C engine. And just like on the KTM, the result here too is explosive. That's the word for it. Forget the sensible Swedes, ladies and gentlemen. This is satanic. This is sensational. It's got the same sprocketing, the same state of tune, the same gearing as the Duke, and what that means is that you don't just accelerate hard in the low end, you don't just have a strong mid-range, you still have that same intoxicating, orgasmic top end. And thanks to the new, more responsive chassis as well as the lighter curb weight, you don't just reach corners faster, you can also take them much quicker. The Pirelli Scorpion Rally STR tyres may look rugged, but when you take a closer look, the wide, big block pattern means your contact patch isn't compromised. So you can push hard on the road and off of it. And while these are block pattern tyres which are usually noisier, these don't add too much to the NVH levels. And that brings us to the second bit, comfort. The new engine and frame have, aside from making me feel genuinely aroused on a good road, also led to better packaging, which means a lower seat height and a longer, more cushioned seat as well. This also gets fully adjustable suspension front and rear, so you can tweak the ride to suit your style, just like the Duke. But just like the Duke, there is always a sporty edge to it. It's never supple, but it won't rattle your spine either. But unlike the Duke, the seat height is a little bit higher, though the seat itself is narrower, which should make shorter riders feel welcome. And unlike the Duke, the handlebar risers mean the riding position is a bit more relaxed. So overall, this is the more comfortable motorcycle of the two. That said, this isn't a tourer, so long hours in the saddle may hurt your bum, but for shorter stints, it's perfectly comfortable. And you can appreciate that comfort for longer because while the old 9-litre fuel tank would be done and dusted before you left the house, the new 13.5-litre tank is more usable. By the way, the new Duke has a 15-litre tank, and by the way, if the way to your office has bad roads, you need not get worked up because the better packaging has also led to more ground clearance, and there's also a bash plate, both of which increase the usability and the versatility of the Svartpilen. And that usability factor is further turned up by the beautiful 5-inch TFT display, which gets lovely Husqvarna specific graphics, traction control, ABS, self-cancelling indicators, and while the old engine from the 390 kept tugging at the leash if you went slowly, this heels obediently, so you will have no trouble at city speeds. But of course, when you want it to, it will still run like a husky. The new quick shifter makes every stride smoother, every gear change is faster, every kilometer is more rewarding. The black arrow, that's what Svartpilen means, and while I rarely touch on style in my videos because it is so subjective, design isn't subjective, and the design here, except for that tail section, is a solid 9 on 10. While the 250 Huskies look too small, too narrow, this has the right amount of muscle, the right amount of rugged, the right pop of color. The devil really is in the details. Just like the Duke, the brake disc at the front has been moved to the right, so the motorcycle is more aesthetically pleasing when it's parked, just like the Duke. But this isn't like the Duke. The base is the same and the changes are small, but tadka is what makes a regular dal taste outstanding. And for me, this has tadka. Because just when KTM's design were getting a bit too much for me, this comes as a less in-your-face, sexier and more affordable alternative. And I don't think you'll see too many skinny jeaned, green-haired TikTokers riding this in chappals either, if you know what I mean. You will run into these guys at the service center and showrooms though, because those are shared with KTM for the Husqvarna brand. But there is one devil, these tires. Tubed, spoked rims. These are a deal breaker for me. If they aren't for you, then that's your call. Thankfully, the tire size isn't unique, so you can actually put in the Vitpilen 250s alloys there, and the Scorpion Rally STRs are actually tubeless ready, so they will work. It is a hassle though, firstly, and secondly, would it look as good? Maybe, maybe not. But Husqvarna tells us that adding tubeless spoke rims would have meant a 15 to 20,000 rupee increase in the price. And since this is based on the KTM 390, it won't be the most refined motorcycle either, especially after you cross 5,500 RPM. Then there's the news of the new KTM engines having reliability issues, which means you should probably wait before buying one in any case. But I do trust the brand to sort it out in time. Anyways, I wrote a bit of a poem to sum it all up. A Swede I'd love to ride to the North Star, near perfection, yet distant. So close, yet so far. Okay, now that the film is over, we've got some questions from you guys and we've got some questions of our own which we'd like to answer to you guys. So let's take them one by one. The first one is brand awareness. What is Husqvarna? Well, it's a Swedish brand. It's pronounced Husqvarna or something like that. But it's basically a Swedish brand. They were in the business of making guns earlier, muskets to be precise, back in the 16th century. Today, they're part of the same KTM group that's owned by Pierre. And that's why they share most of their parts, the engine, the chassis, and a lot of the other equipment, switchgear with KTM as well. And they're actually built in the same factory in Pune. Question number 2, why didn't Husqvarna perform well in India? Well, it's no surprise Huskies were a bit of a failure, to be honest, in the Indian market, and there were quite a lot of problems that plagued them. Number 1 was the pronunciation of the brand itself. If no one can pronounce it, how will they Google it? And if they can't Google it, how will it ever reach someone's shortlist? Problem number 1. Problem number 2 is that they launched in India with the 250s, and the 250s were very small motorcycles. They were very narrow and very short, and they just didn't look like substantial motorcycles. And for someone who wanted a substantial motorcycle at that price, they just didn't fit the bill. Plus, they also had really high seat heights. So you had a motorcycle that was small for tall people, but then too tall for small people, which is another problem that they had. But now with the 401 coming in, that should be sorted. You have bigger, chunkier motorcycles, so that problem should be out of the way. The awesome DSM asked us on Instagram why they haven't bought the Vitpilen 401. And the thinking behind that is that the Vitpilen, in any case, is more a city, street-friendly motorcycle. So they gave that the 250 treatment, and they gave the Svartpilen, which is more outgoing, more sort of out of the city sort of a motorcycle, the power of the 401. Now, why didn't they bring 4 motorcycles, like bring this in the 250 and bring that in the 401 as well, is because they weren't really high-selling motorcycles in the first place, and they sort of didn't want to burden the dealers with 4 motorcycles. That's why they chose 2, and these are the 2 that we have. Okay, number 3, service. Where do you service these? Where do you buy these? And the answer to that is that you buy them and service them at KTM Husqvarna co-branded dealerships. They will sort of have very similar spare parts, very similar spare part costs as well, and they have the same service intervals as the KTM. So service experience would be very similar to a KTM, which can differ from center to center. My experience with my KTM has been good, efficient and fast, but not premium in any way, shape or form. Number 4, how is it different from a Duke? This was asked by Swapnil Pathak on Instagram. Hi Swapnil. The answer is that it's got the same engine, the same mainframe, the same suspension, the same brakes and a lot of the same components. What's different is it's got a different rear subframe. Of course, it's got a completely different rear tail section. And there is also the lack of launch control, the lack of riding modes. You get spoke rims with tube tires and a smaller fuel tank as well, and a more relaxed rider's triangle compared to the 390 Duke. It's also a little bit more affordable. Question number 5, reliability and should you buy one today? As I mentioned in the video as well, the KTM 399cc engine has been facing some problems that we've seen online. So I would not buy these motorcycles outright. I would not want to be in the first batch of people who buy these motorcycles. I would wait, let owners put miles on these, wait for their reviews to come, wait for the production to get sorted out, wait for these troubles to get sorted out, and only then go out and buy this motorcycle. Of course, you can still go out, take test rides, see which motorcycle you prefer, and only then buy. And of course, thank you for watching PowerDrift. Let me know in the comments if you guys like this FAQ section of the video, and of course, if you like the motorcycle or not. And now I can finally actually walk out of the frame. Man, this is like a ticket to jail.